Thank you for joining us. We are continuously interested in solutions and the future, and our guest today is Zoltan Istvan, an increasingly famous American writer and futurist, a philosopher and transhumanist, in fact. He's very much in demand for speaking engagements and is actually running for office. He's been on Fox News, CNN, and other shows, and we're very pleased to have him share his views with us following these messages. The Life Extension Foundation is a non-profit institute with a 37-year track record of cutting-edge discovery that is light years ahead with medical breakthroughs. To learn more about the Life Extension Foundation, log on to immortalitynow.com. With us now is Zoltan Istvan. It's a real pleasure and privilege to have you on the show, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Richard.
You have such an illustrious career in your young age, really. You've done everything from National Geographic to touring the world and getting involved in incredible causes and initiatives. Tell us a little bit about these.
Well, I think I've just always been an adventurous type of person. What happened was when I was around 21 years old, I began a trip sailing solo around the world. My sailboat is currently in Greece. I haven't finished my trip, but I do plan to finish it. And through that, I saw literally dozens and dozens of countries. I visited over 100 countries, many as a journalist, many for the National Geographic Channel, been through war zones and stuff like that. But most recently, what I've been involved in is the field of transhumanism, of promoting science and technology to the general public and trying to get people to embrace the idea that science and technology can make us healthier and live better and have much longer lifespan.
Transhumanism is a very interesting term. Please explain to our audience what that means.
Sure. Well, transhumanism is, well, to begin with, it's just a movement of people, engineers, scientists that are trying to promote technology and science specifically oriented towards life extension or living longer and healthier. But transhuman, the word itself actually means beyond human. That's the Latin, beyond human. And we like to think of it in terms of using whatever means possible to live a lot better, a lot longer, and just to maybe, you could look at it as almost upgrading the human body. That's really what transhumanism is about.
I apologize for the background noise. We are in a hotel here in Napa Valley, and I'd like to continue. Zoltan, you've written a book recently, and it's getting a lot of acclaim. Tell us about it.
Well, I wrote a novel called The Transhumanist Wager. It took me about 4 years of working on it, and within the first month, it rose to being a #1 bestseller in philosophy on Amazon, and also was a bestseller in science fiction visionary on Amazon. It's really been a very, I think, powerful and meaningful book for the futurist community, also the transhumanist community. It's a book that deals with a character who will essentially do anything to accomplish his aim of trying to live indefinitely or become immortal. And that's the controversy around it, because that is a bit of a touchy subject. And so the book has done very well, but it's not always the most liked book, and it's just kind of ruffled a lot of feathers, you might say.
And of course, you have become very prominent, and you're interviewed all the time, and people are quite interested in your work. In fact, you've been prodded into, I believe, running for president. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, I recently founded the Transhumanist Party, and my goal is to use that as a platform to run for the 2016 U.S. presidency position. It's very unlikely and unrealistic to think that a newly founded party and myself would actually win such a race. Our goal is not to become the United States president, to take the Transhumanist Party to Americans and get them to necessarily be on board with it. It's really to influence the existing politicians that are there and to try to take transhumanism into a much larger format. And the political arena is the best way to do it. So far, transhumanism has not been involved in politics. So I think transhumanism and the Transhumanist Party itself can make a really big impact on politics, especially if I can be able to debate some of the other leading candidates and stuff like that. I'll be able to ask them the questions that really need to be asked. Why are we not dedicating more resources towards science? Why are we not worrying about artificial intelligence and whether there might be a kind of Terminator scenario? These are things that politicians aren't asking, but these are the questions that the Transhumanist Party is asking.
Will you have an opportunity to debate other candidates?
I think I will have the opportunity. I'm pretty good at getting myself in into a position where people sort of have to answer some of the questions I'm presenting to them. I write blogs for major media, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and Vice's Motherboard, and they're getting a lot of attention. They're getting enough attention where they're making people say, wow, if someone's going to present such difficult questions, we better be able to answer them. I have a very large debate coming up here at Stanford University on November 15th with John Zerzan. He's the leading primitivist philosopher one of the leading primitivist philosophers in the world. And so it's nice that there's some of this attention being shown to transhumanism. I fully expect that some of the candidates will have to at least have conversations with me in public.
I'd love to ask you the following. If you're sitting with President Obama, for example, what questions would you challenge him with regard to Syria and ISIS?
Well, I have this interesting theory with Syria and ISIS right now, and this is quite controversial, but one of the ideas I would be asking is why are not a lot of the American aid workers wearing either some type of tracking device or have embedded chips? And this is a classic transhumanist technology that we would have chips either into our hands or somewhere in our body that we could then be tracked. Well, this would eliminate a huge part of the problem with ISIS, for example. If we just knew where these people, where our captives were, then they wouldn't get all this media attention. They wouldn't have anyone to behead. So this is the kind of stuff where transhumanism can get in the mix of it with technology and all of a sudden solve a problem and make it so that if they don't have media attention, they don't get that kind of publicity, they're going to have to change their tactics dramatically.
That's an incredibly good idea, and it, of course, should be implemented. What would you ask other candidates with regard to the economy in the United States?
Well, this is a more difficult question, and one thing that the Transhumanist Party is going to be doing is not trying to push forth ideas about the economy or ideas about how to run people's lives. What we're really trying to do is bring science and technology into the political arena and into politics. So I don't have right now a fully developed agenda around economics, around social policy. What I'm trying to do is ask questions like, for example, to Obama. I've just written an article on this. Why do we not have an Ebola vaccine already? Ebola has been around for 20, 30 years. This is the kind of existential risk that a transhumanist president would have already dealt with a long time ago. He would have dealt with Ebola long before it arrived on our shores. And now we have a serious crisis where people in America are starting to wonder, wow, what if Ebola spreads? We don't have a backup plan right now. The nearest vaccine is months and months away. This is the kind of thing that a transhumanist philosopher, a transhumanist president would initiate way ahead of time, long before these things happen. These are the kind of questions I would ask the politicians and Obama. Why don't we have these things right now? We should.
We certainly should, and these are excellent questions. And it brings to mind how the movie Outbreak suddenly is hidden. No one is showing it. With regard to other threats facing our world and intelligent solutions, what are your views with regard to technology being applied in environmental solutions and also threats from space?
I think one of the platforms of my presidential candidacy that I would like to, I'm planning on running on, is this idea that we want to protect the species from existential risk. It actually astonishes me that governments around the world do not take things like potential asteroid impacts or, for example, Ebola diseases and stuff like, or even the growing possibility of having artificial intelligence occur within 10 years, strong artificial intelligence, where we'll have a machine that's equally as smart as a human being. Governments are not doing anything about that right now. I think we need to use technology and science to make it so that we can actually have safeguards put in place. We would have programs created. We would have government oversight to some of these things. I was recently speaking at the Singularity Conference in Oakland, California, and I was on a panel with a bunch of experts for artificial intelligence. And the question was asked, well, what can we do if a rogue group wants to start its own artificial intelligence? And not one expert had any answer to how to stop that. And I thought, well, this is potentially the most dangerous thing that could ever happen. You would have an artificial intelligence take over all the machines in the world. It could devastate civilization.
What an interesting concept you're suggesting here. And of course, we already know that it is possible to access a rogue nation's nuclear program using viruses such as Stuxnet to actually damage their equipment or destroy it. And equally so, one can assume that it is possible really to do far greater damage. Elaborate a little more on that.
Well, you know, the future of warfare is going to be cyber warfare. There's no question about it. It's going to be piracy, it's going to be hackers, it's going to be people that know computers and coding inside out. So whoever has the best computers, whoever has the best coders, whoever has the best engineers, and the best protectors against hacking and viruses, they're going to be the victors.
On a more positive note, tell us how you view transhumanism with regard to health.
Well, I consider transhumanism and health almost one and the same. I mean, honestly, transhumanism is really about extending one's life, making them as healthy as possible, making them as strong as possible. They're almost one and the same word. What I like to think of with transhumanism is just telling people it's about artificial hearts, it's about pacemakers, it's about putting chips in your head when you have Alzheimer's and stimulating it so you can have your memory returned to you. This is all what transhumanism is. It's any single technology that can help you live better, healthier, and longer. It's a transhumanist technology. So they're very much one and the same.
I was just speaking with Randall Kuna about precisely that, how these artificial processes and products can one day cure Alzheimer's, replace damaged parts of the brain, perhaps even before they get damaged. And of course, Bill Falloon, the co-founder of Life Extension Foundation, has done a lot of research in this, and he also has Alcor and related interests in the subject matter that you are promoting.
Yes, well, I mean, first off, there's a giant field of people that are entering this field, and it's wonderful because transhumanism is not just about applying some type of Band-Aid to the human being. It's actually about removing disease altogether way ahead of time. What's going to be happening in the next 10 years is you're going to be finding people replacing their heart, a good heart, with an artificial heart. It might be 15 years. But I would argue approximately 12 years, there will be a robotic heart that will be better than the human heart. In fact, it'll be better than an Olympian's human heart. Now think about it. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America, I think in the world. About 1/3 or 1/4 of every person dies from heart disease. So if you could do that kind of switch, if you could do that kind of upgrade, it's very possible that you would eliminate all heart disease. And that's what transhumanism is about. It's not just about applying it afterwards. It's about solving the problem of death ahead of time.
Utilizing technology for the advancement of humanity. Tell us a little bit more about your plans for the future.
Well, the most important thing is that for the next 2 years, I'm going to be running a presidential campaign where I'm trying to get elected for office. So that involves writing articles, shaking hopefully millions of people's hands, dinners, campaigning, lunches, giving speeches. That's really what I'm intending to do for the next 2 years. And it's all going to be centered around trying to promote science and technology and getting people to realize that the future is coming a lot more quickly than most people realize. And we need to get a handle on it. I know everyone worries about immigration. I know everyone worries about Social Security and this kind of stuff. But in the future, I think with artificial intelligence and some of these other big things coming, you're going to find that worrying about science and technology is going to probably be the most important item.
Absolutely fascinating. Zoltan, I'm sure many of our viewers would like to know how you actually got involved in transhumanism.
Well, so I have been involved in transhumanism for about 20 years, but only publicly have I been involved really in the last 2 years since my book came out and did so well. But I'll tell you a little anecdote about one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. When I was working for the National Geographic Channel, I was in Vietnam doing a story on bomb diggers. Now, America dropped millions and millions of tons of bombs on Vietnam, but about 10% of those bombs never exploded. And over the last 20, 30 years, growth has gone over those bombs, but you now have an entire generation of kind of people that are digging up these bombs and selling the metal for money. They make more money selling the metal of bombs than they do from rice farming. And so I was there in Vietnam for National Geographic covering this story. The problem with it is that there are landmines all over the place. It's in the demilitarized zone of Vietnam. And so that's the danger of the story, is anywhere you go to film, you have to worry about stepping on a landmine. And I had one instance when my guide tackled me, pushed me aside and tackled me, and said, look, look, look. And I didn't see it, and there was halfway sticking out of the ground a little metal object that he later pointed out was a landmine that I likely would have stepped on. And it was one of those moments where I'm just sitting there afterwards looking at this thing sitting on the ground, this little circular object. And all the guides know what the landmines look like, and a lot of them are half buried and half not buried because of erosion over 20 or 30 years. And it just was a very powerful moment for me where I said, I want to dedicate my life to not dying. I want to dedicate my life to transhumanism because I don't like the idea of having half my body blown off and that being the end of me. So I decided from that moment on to really start pushing publicly to promote transhumanism. And in fact, upon returning home to the United States, I began writing The Transhumanist Wager.
What a horrific experience that must have been, nearly stepping on a landmine. And there's so many distributed all over the world still, and hopefully will be eliminated. Thinking of landmines, one thinks of the injuries they cause and people losing legs and arms. Tell us about robotics.
Well, robotics is such a fascinating industry right now because it's at the cusp of some of the most important advances you can imagine. Right now, amputees, often soldiers who have lost limbs, for example, a soldier lost a limb, an arm in battle, and in various universities, specifically one Swedish university, is now attaching robotic arms, but they're able to attach the robotic arm to the nervous system. So now an amputee can have a robotic arm, grab a glass of water, and drink it by thinking it. And that's one of the greatest things that's happened in robotics recently, is that we now have the capability of having mind control to our robotics, so that you can actually control a robotic arm if you've lost a limb and use it to eat dinner, to drink water, any of these things. This is where transhumanism is one of the most wonderful things in the world, because it's helping people that have lost much hope to become whole again. For handicapped people, robotics, transhumanism, these kinds of ideas are brilliant. It's just helping everyone around the world.
Absolutely brilliant. And in fact, a lot of it is pioneered in Israel.
I do follow the stock market a little, and I've often been amazed how many public companies there are in Israel that deal specifically with technology. It seems like there are a huge amount, and that's, congratulations, because the more companies out there like that are working in technology, working towards transhumanist goals, the better the world is going to be. I mean, technology is a proven factor in reducing poverty worldwide. It's a proven factor in making people live longer, and it's a proven factor in just simply making our lives easier so that we can, for example, sit here on television and just talk and have other people all around the world see it.
Zoltan, you have such exciting visions for the future and solutions. We need solutions in this world. Tell us more, a little bit about how you see energy and technology addressing those concerns.
We definitely need a better source of energy. I'm encouraged by a lot of the reports, especially in this last month, by things regarding fusion and also some of the green energy. I'm encouraged by places that are using more windmills and wind power and stuff like that to generate power. Even in California, we're now going through this kind of solar panel frenzy where, they're putting solar panels finally in vast spaces in the desert that are just doing, not much anyways.
You remind me a little of Elon Musk and his electric cars and plans for the future. Visionaries such as yourself and he are what bring a lot of optimism, I would say, to our troubled world.
Well, I think optimism is a good thing. I mean, if you're a scientist, you have to have some skepticism, obviously, to make sure you're doing the right thing and, you know, crossing all your T's. But optimism is definitely something that's contagious. And the more you look around, you see people in wheelchairs getting out with exoskeleton technology. I used to be so afraid of when I would go surfing or riding my motorcycle that I'd end up in a wheelchair. Well, wheelchairs aren't going to exist. Sorry for the wheelchair manufacturers, but they're not going to exist in 5 or 10 years. We're going to have exoskeletons for people that are in wheelchairs. That's why I have so much optimism, because all around us you see these things that most of us would have considered miracles 20 or 30 years ago, and yet today they're becoming standard practice to a lot of technologists and scientists. And it's nothing for what we're going to see in the next 10 or 20 years. It's going to get crazy. There's going to be so many upgrades to the human experience that it's really going to blow away a lot of people.
Zoltan, this is really quite fascinating. Before we conclude, if you have a message for our audience, please share it.
Well, I think the one message I always like to give people is that there's so much happening, and it's so much more fantastic than people realize regarding technology and science. I encourage people to read books about it, to look at movies about it, and just to open themselves up to the idea that it's okay for the human being to change, to evolve. One day we will be downloading ourselves into machines. One day we may all have robotic arms. One day we may all use exoskeleton technology for sports, especially if we can run faster than cheetahs, and that's going to happen to the species. So it's okay. I know a lot of people are kind of find it weird or find it distressing, but it's part of evolution, and it's just part of how the world is going to go. But embracing it will make people happier, and I certainly encourage any of your viewers, if they don't know much about transhumanism, grab a copy of my book, The Transhumanist Wager, grab a copy of Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near, and just grab a book on anything about transhumanism and read it, because it's fascinating and it's going to be happening in the next 10 or 20 years, and I promise you, it's going to be a future like really no one is imagining right now.
Let's hope it's a good future. Thank you so very, very much. A real pleasure having you with us today, Zoltan.
Oh, thank you for having me, Richard. I appreciate it.
With the robotic system, we performed more than 7,000 cases with more than 50,000 implants, and there are 0 cases of permanent nerve damage in all these thousands of cases. This is a statistic that we are really very proud of. Mazor Renaissance system is a guidance system for spine and brain surgery that guides the surgeon to a specific location very accurately.
Once a patient is chosen to undergo surgery, he's been doing a preoperative CT. The surgeon plans on the CT prior to the surgery. In the operating room, we have a fluoroscopy, which is like X-ray images that are taken inside the operating room. Then the system synchronizes both images. After the 2 images are synchronized and the planning is executed, the surgeon sends the robot to the required trajectory. And then through that guidance system, he drills the holes that will eventually be used for the pedicle screws.
We designed a robot of the size of a human fist that actually fixed on the patient's spine. The robot, the spine, and the patient is moving as one rigid body. This is very accurate guidance, and also you can make the operation minimally invasive. The surgeon doesn't have to open the screen in order to see where to go.
It increases the accuracy, the clinical outcomes for the patients, less pain, faster recovery, even less fluoroscopy in the operating room. So all together brings in better results, both for the patients, the surgeon, and for the hospital.
There are hundreds of research institutions and universities that have programs in medical robotics. But there are only very few that made all the way through the design, manufacturing, clinical trials, FDA approval into becoming actual product. Out of all these hundreds of research, maybe less than 10 made all this way. One of them is Mazor Renaissance system that started as an idea in the Technion and right now became a fully commercial robot. And this is the only one in the world for spine application.
The Renaissance by Mazor is being used worldwide in Israel, in the United States, in Asia, Australia.
I'm Floyd Goodlow, and I'm a Renaissance man. Well, I'm a rancher that lives here in Lincoln County, Capitan, New Mexico area. The worst one was probably 15 years ago when my horse flipped and threw me against the canyon wall. I hit with my butt first and he piled right into that wall. I think the Renaissance system is great, and I would not recommend anything else. My rate of recovery, the things I've been able to do, and the quality of life I've got back is what I'd like to share with anybody that has that problem.
I couldn't sit or stand for a long time without pain. I would constantly be popping my back.
We had no idea that scoliosis would develop in such a manner that we would see its manifestations by the age of 13.
We wanted to limit the number of vertebrae that we were going to fuse. So this is where the robotics was going to play into supporting that plan. It increases the accuracy and the safety of what I'm doing. And the accuracy with which it does it, if we're off by more than a millimeter, it won't let us even try to insert the screw.
I have 2 titanium rods along my back and screws in there as well. I had a curve of 50 degrees. And then after, Javita was able to fix it to less than a degree. So now I'm straight. I had my surgery June 2010, and about 6 months later I was cleared, and then I went back to pole vaulting.
It's an extra safety factor that has been, I think is going to be, as it becomes more widely known, a quantum leap in neurosurgical technology.
Next application for robotics that we can use the system is for brain application, and in particular is to use this small robot attached to the skull and direct needles for biopsy and for deep brain stimulation.
This brings us to the end of our special program for today from On Location in the San Francisco area. I'm Richard Peritz. Thank you for being with us.